Hi there, John from McClungmusic.com here, and this is the first in what's going to be a series of videos about how to play by ear. So, if you've always wanted to be able to sit down at the piano and just think of a tune and start playing, this is the course for you. A couple of things before we get started. This course is really focused on piano, though the lessons I'm going to be talking about do apply to other instruments. Obviously I've got a piano here, so it's what I know, it's what I'll be focusing on. Second, we're going to be starting out really just focusing on the key of C. And the reason for that is just makes things a little bit simpler. Later on you can take the lessons that you learn here and apply them to other keys. But to start out, I do really recommend just starting with C, just to make your life a little bit easier. And third, for the same reasons, I'm also going to be starting out just in major keys. I'll do some videos later on playing by ear in minor keys because it's a little more complicated. But again, just to make your life easier starting out, we're just going to be talking about major keys at the beginning. And lastly, in case you're wondering, these videos will really help you with any genre of music you're interested in. So if you want to play pop music or rock or hymns or folk songs or jazz, these principles and the techniques I'm going to show you really apply to every genre of music there is. So let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about scales. What is a scale and how does it help us? Okay, so what's a scale? When I say scale, and when most people say scale, they're talking about one particular scale, and that's the Diatonic Scale. In the key of C, it's 7 notes, and then it repeats, on and on and on. So just these 7 notes, and then diatonic scale. Okay. So why are we interested in the diatonic scale? Because this is the basis for literally all Western music in the past 2,500 years, which is actually true. We know the Greeks used these. Actually, we get some of the older names for these scales from the Greeks. Their music was based on it. Gregorian chant in the Middle Ages was based on this. All classical music is based on this. All pop music is based on this same scale. So the Gregorian chant, music of Bach, Justin Bieber, they all use the same scale. So, how do you know which notes are in the scale? Well, in the key of C, it's very simple on the piano because it's just the white notes. If you're playing something relatively simple, and that's what we're going to be starting out with, in the key of C, you don't really have to worry about the black notes at all. It's just these white notes. That's actually why they made the keyboard this way, to make things simpler because people always use this scale. Okay, so why is this scale important for playing by ear? Well, one, as I mentioned, because music is based on the scale. And two, because when you get used to this scale and the sort of characteristics of the scale, it really helps think about it's sort of the field you're playing in. It's your surroundings. So the more you really get comfortable with a scale, the more you're comfortable with playing music in that scale. Now there's a couple of particular things you need to know. First thing is, not all notes in a scale are equal. They're not all equally important. In the key of C, the most important note by far is, surprise, C. You can call this tonic, you can think of it as home bass. In the Middle Ages, they actually call it the final, which makes sense because back then and even today, most melodies end on the final. So you think about even and it brings us back to the final. That's true of so many melodies. So C is home bass. So really pay attention to that because when you're playing by ear, you always want to know where home is. The other most important notes are the other notes of what we call the one chord in the key. So the C major chord in the key of C major. These notes are all very important. And they're also very common in melodies. So, if you did a statistical study, I think you'd probably find that the majority of the notes in any particular melody are going to be one of these 3 pitches. And why is that? Well, part of the reason it's harmonic, and part of it's sort of structural. Because when you're on one of these notes, there's a feeling of almost repose. So, home base, when you're at home, that really feels like home. And when you're on one of these other notes, it feels almost like you're home away from home. And when you're on any other note, the D, or the F, or the A, or the B, there's a certain tension that, the melody's sort of wandering away, and then eventually comes back home. So, think about Amazing Grace. Sort of hear a little bit of that tension. There's not a whole lot of tension in this melody, but there's a little bit. So home away from home, and then you get a D, and you get an A. Do you hear the tension there? Just a little bit there. So you hear, and then D, you can tell that that's not your home. You're still moving, and you're moving down to their home note. And then when you get to the A, you're going somewhere else. So it's subtle, but if you pay attention to this, you'll notice it in music that this tension and release is something that songwriters use to create sort of a dramatic flow to a melody. And the more you think about it and the more you listen to it, the more you'll notice it, and it'll really help you play by ear. So listen to this one more time. So, something to think about. That's pretty much all I have for today. Hopefully you have a little bit better idea of what your diatonic scale is and why you need to know that. Next time, the next video, we're going to dive straight into playing melodies by ear, and we're going to build on all the things we talked about in this video and apply them to how you actually start playing melodies. So, I'm going to put a link, hopefully right about here. Click on that and go to the next video, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.